Tell me about a time you worked closely with another developer. Introduction. This is a common behavioral interview question for software developers, backend developers, full-stack developers, senior developers, and team leads. Interviewers ask this question to understand how you collaborate with other developers, how you communicate technical ideas, how you handle different opinions, how you give and receive feedback, how you work during pair programming or code reviews, how you share knowledge, how you deliver features as a team. This question is especially important for Java developers, backend developers, Spring Boot developers, full-stack developers, junior software developers, senior software developers, team leads, agile teams. The best way to answer this question is by using the STAR method. STAR means S, situation, explain the background. T, task, explain your responsibility. A, action, explain what you personally did. R, result, explain the final outcome. A good interview answer usually spends 10% situation, 10% task, 60% action, 20% result. The most important part is the action section, because interviewers want to understand how you collaborated, communicated, and helped move the work forward. Question. Tell me about a time you worked closely with another developer. Example 1. Pair programming on a new feature situation. In one project, our team needed to build a new backend feature quickly. The feature required API changes, validation logic, database updates, and integration with another internal service. Task. I worked closely with another developer to design and implement the feature within the sprint timeline. Action. We started by reviewing the requirement together. We split the work based on strengths, but we also stayed aligned on the full design. I focused more on the backend API, validation, and service layer logic. The other developer focused more on database changes and integration testing. We discussed kernel, endpoint design, request DTO, response DTO, validation rules, database table changes, error handling, test scenarios, integration points. During implementation, we paired on the most complex parts. We reviewed each other's code frequently, instead of waiting until the end. When we disagreed on one validation approach, we compared both options and chose the one that was simpler, easier to test, and aligned with existing project patterns. We also added unit tests and integration tests together. Result. The feature was delivered on time. Because we collaborated early, there were fewer review comments and fewer integration issues. The code followed existing patterns and was easier for the team to maintain. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows check teamwork, pair programming, shared design ownership, communication, code review, testing, delivery focus. Example 2. Debugging a production issue together situation. In one production application, users reported that an API was failing intermittently. The issue was difficult because it did not happen for every request. Task. I worked closely with another developer to find the root cause and fix the issue safely. Action. We started by dividing the investigation. I reviewed application logs, API metrics, and recent code changes. The other developer checked database records, query behavior, and deployment configuration. Then, we compared our findings. We noticed that failures happened only for requests with a specific optional field missing. I reproduced the issue locally using a similar payload, while the other developer verified the database state. Once we confirmed the root cause, we worked together on the fix. The fix included copy, handling the missing optional field safely, adding validation logic, adding unit tests for missing and present field scenarios, adding regression tests for existing behavior, reviewing logs to ensure no sensitive data was exposed, coordinating with QA for verification. We also documented the root cause and added a follow-up task to improve validation coverage. Result. The production issue was fixed quickly. The regression tests prevented the same issue from happening again. Working together helped us find the root cause faster because we investigated different parts of the system in parallel. Why this answer works. This answer is strong because it shows cut, production debugging, teamwork under pressure, parallel investigation, root cause analysis, safe fix, prevention mindset. Example 3, code review collaboration situation. In one sprint, another developer submitted a pull request for a new API. The feature worked, but I noticed some areas that could cause maintainability and security issues later. Task. My responsibility was to review the code carefully and provide helpful feedback without slowing down the developer unnecessarily. Action. I reviewed the pull request with a focus on correctness, maintainability, security, and consistency with team standards. I looked at key endpoint naming, key DTO design, key validation, key authorization checks, key error handling, key database queries, key test coverage, key logging. I noticed that the API returned the database entity directly instead of using a response DTO. I also noticed that one authorization check was handled only in the front end. Instead of just leaving negative comments, I explained why these changes mattered. I suggested creating a response DTO to protect the API contract and adding backend authorization so direct API calls were also secured. I also offered to pair for a short time to help make the changes faster. The developer accepted the feedback, and we updated the PR together. Result: the API became more secure and maintainable. The developer appreciated the explanation because the feedback was practical, not just critical. The review also helped establish a better pattern for future APIs. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows a constructive code review, a communication skill, a security awareness, a API design knowledge, a mentoring mindset, a team improvement. Example 4. Working with a front-end developer situation. In one full-stack project, the front-end needed to show a dashboard with customer summary data. The back-end did not yet have an API that returned the data in the exact format needed by the UI. Task. I worked closely with a front-end developer to design the API contract and deliver the feature smoothly. Action. We started by reviewing the UI design and identifying the data required by each section. I asked the front-end developer what fields were needed, what loading behavior was expected, and how errors should be displayed. Then, I designed the backend API response DTO to match the UI needs without exposing unnecessary internal fields. We agreed on check endpoint URL, check request parameters, response fields, loading state behavior, empty result behavior, validation errors, error response format, pagination if data grew later. I also shared sample JSON responses before the API was fully implemented. This allowed the front-end developer to start integration earlier using mocked data. After implementation, we tested the API and UI together. Result: the front-end integration went smoothly. There were fewer back-and-forth changes because we agreed on the API contract early. The feature was delivered faster and with fewer defects. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows con, front-end back-end collaboration, API contract design, communication, early alignment, reducing rework, delivery efficiency. Example 5. Resolving a technical disagreement situation. In one project, I worked with another developer on improving a slow API. We had two different ideas. I suggested query optimization and pagination. The other developer suggested adding caching immediately. Task. We needed to choose the best approach without turning the discussion into a personal disagreement. Action. I suggested that we compare both approaches based on the actual problem. We reviewed. Check API response time. Check database query execution time. Check how often the data changed. Check request volume. Check risk of stale data. Check implementation effort. Check long-term maintainability. After checking the metrics, we found that the query was doing a full table scan and returning too much data. Caching would help later, but the first issue was inefficient data access. We agreed to optimize the query and add pagination first. Then we added caching only for low-risk reference data. This gave us a balanced solution. Result: The API response time improved significantly. The database load decreased. The collaboration stayed positive because we used data and trade-offs instead of opinions. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows handling disagreement professionally, data-driven decision-making, collaboration, performance analysis, trade-off thinking, mature communication. Example 6. Mentoring a junior developer situation. In one sprint, a junior developer was assigned to implement a new validation feature. They understood the requirement, but were unsure how to structure the code and tests. Task. I worked closely with them to help deliver the feature, while also helping them learn the project's coding standards. Action. I first asked them to explain their understanding of the requirement. Then, we reviewed the existing validation patterns in the codebase. I helped them break the work into smaller steps, create request DTO validation, add service layer business validation, return field-level error messages, add unit tests, add integration tests, update API documentation. Instead of writing the code for them, I guided them through the design and reviewed their implementation. During code review, I explained why certain changes were needed, such as keeping validation logic separate from controller logic. I also encouraged them to ask questions and think through edge cases. Result. The junior developer completed the feature successfully. They became more confident with the codebase. The final implementation followed team standards and had good test coverage. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows check mentoring, collaboration, patience, knowledge sharing, code quality, team development. Example 7. Working with another developer on microservices integration situation. In one microservices project, my service needed to integrate with another team's service. The integration involved REST API calls, security headers, error handling, and timeout behavior. Task. I worked closely with the developer from the other team to make sure the integration was reliable and clear. Action. We started by reviewing the API contract together. We confirmed CAPS endpoint URL, CAPS request payload, CAPS response payload, CAPS authentication headers, CAPS error codes, timeout expectations, CAPS retry behavior, test data, CAPS lower environment availability. I created the client integration in our service, while the other developer helped clarify downstream behavior. We also discussed failure scenarios. I added check timeout configuration, check error handling, logging with correlation ID, safe retry behavior, fallback behavior where appropriate, tests for success and failure responses. When we found one mismatch in the response field name, we corrected the contract before production deployment. Result. The integration worked successfully. We avoided production issues because we aligned on the contract early. The service-to-service communication became more reliable and easier to troubleshoot. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows cross-team collaboration, microservices integration, API contract alignment, resilience design, communication, testing. Example 8. Sharing knowledge after solving a bug situation. In one project, I worked with another developer to solve a difficult bug related to date filtering. The bug happened only for records created near midnight. Task. After we fixed the issue, I wanted to make sure the learning was shared with the rest of the team. Action. We investigated the issue together by comparing API responses, database values, and front-end display dates. We found that the database stored timestamps in UTC, but one part of the application converted dates differently. After fixing the time zone conversion, we added tests for accurate, records near midnight, UTC timestamps, local time zone conversion, month-end dates, daylight saving time scenarios. Then we documented the learning. We shared a short explanation in the team meeting and updated the developer notes so others would avoid similar mistakes. Result. The bug was fixed. The team became more aware of time zone handling. Future date-related bugs were reduced because developers had clearer guidance and tests. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows collaboration, debugging, knowledge sharing, documentation, preventing repeat issues, team improvement. Best short answer version. If you need a short interview answer, you can say, in one project, I worked closely with another developer to build a new Spring Boot API feature. The feature involved request validation, database changes, error handling, and integration testing. We started by reviewing the requirement together and agreeing on the API contract, request DTO, response DTO, validation rules, and test scenarios. I focused more on the backend service logic and validation, while the other developer focused on database changes and integration testing. For the complex parts, we paired and reviewed each other's code early instead of waiting until the end. When we had a different opinion about one validation approach, we compared both options and chose the one that was simpler, easier to test, and aligned with existing project patterns. As a result, the feature was delivered on time, integration issues were minimal, and the final code was easier to maintain because we stayed aligned throughout the work. Common mistakes to avoid. 1. Saying only, we worked together. Bad answer. I worked with another developer, and we completed the task. Better answer. Explain how you collaborated, divided work, communicated, reviewed code, solved problems, and delivered the result. 2. Taking all the credit. Bad answer. I did most of the important work. Better answer. Show your contribution while also giving credit to the other developer. 3. Avoiding conflict completely. Bad answer. We never disagreed. Better answer. It is okay to mention a technical disagreement if you handled it professionally using data and trade-offs. 4. No technical detail. Bad answer. We collaborated on a feature. Better answer. Mention API design, validation, testing, database changes, integration, or debugging. 5. No result. Bad answer. It was a good teamwork experience. Better answer. The feature was delivered on time. Review comments decreased, bugs were reduced, or integration became smoother. Best practices for answering this question. Click. Use the STAR method. Explain the project or issue clearly. Mention the other developer's role. Explain your own contribution. Show communication and collaboration. Mention code review or pair programming. Mention how you handle disagreements. Mention testing and delivery. Give credit to the other developer. End with a clear result. What interviewers are looking for. Interviewers want to see whether you can. Click. Collaborate well with developers. Click. Communicate technical ideas clearly. Click. Listen to other opinions. Click. Give and receive feedback. Click. Solve problems as a team. Click. Handle disagreements professionally. Support junior developers. Click. Work across front-end, back-end boundaries. Click. Improve team productivity. For senior roles, they also want to see check mentoring, technical leadership, cross-team collaboration, architecture discussion, code review quality, conflict resolution, knowledge sharing. Strong words to use in your answer. You can use words like 1. Collaborated, aligned, paired, reviewed, discussed, clarified, supported, mentored, coordinated, shared knowledge, resolved, validated, delivered. Example. I collaborated closely with another developer by aligning on the API contract, splitting responsibilities clearly, pairing on complex logic, reviewing each other's code early, and validating the feature together before release. Good collaboration topics you can use. Depending on your experience, you can talk about pair programming on a feature, debugging a production issue together, code review collaboration, front-end back-end API integration, resolving technical disagreement, mentoring a junior developer, microservices integration with another team, sharing knowledge after solving a bug, writing tests together, refactoring a module together. Check. Working with DevOps on deployment. Check. Working with QA on defect fixes. Final summary. Tell me about a time you worked closely with another developer is an important interview question because software development is a team activity. The best answer should include What you worked on. Why collaboration was needed. Your responsibility. The other developer's role. How you communicated. How you divided work. How you solved problems together. How you handled feedback or disagreement. What result you achieved. Good examples include pair programming, production debugging, code review, front-end back-end integration, technical disagreement, mentoring, microservices integration, knowledge sharing. The strongest answers show teamwork, communication, technical contribution, respect, and shared ownership.